Does water play in your life? Last week we talked about soil and the earth. And this week, water. Is water a place of renewal for you? Do you choose to go to a river or a lake or the ocean like Betsy when you want to relax or be restored perhaps? And can you think of a time when water might have played a healing role in your life? You know, the world is wrapped in water, held by water. Imprinted in our minds is that blue marble image of the earth, right? Taken in 1972 from Apollo 17. 71% of the world is water. Now here's what I didn't know. 96% of that is saline water. 2% is ice. I mean, can you imagine just 2% ice when you think of the size of the glaciers? 2% is fresh water, but most of that is underground. Less than 0.3% of water is available fresh water. Now, is it any wonder that we're moving toward water wars in our world and the importance of protecting our waters? But that's another sermon, for sure. The world is wrapped in water, and so are our scriptures. Listen anew to the first words of our sacred text. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. In our creation story, water is the only thing that exists with God before the rest of the world. And then in the book of Revelation, the last book of our Christian scriptures and the last chapter of that book, ends with this image. The angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God. Nothing is accursed there. And the river flows in the middle of the city of God. That river that we just sang about in the hymn. It's as if in our texts, our scriptures, our sacred canon, water is the Alpha and the Omega. And then throughout, water plays a central role in many of our key stories. I mean, think about it. You've got the flood, too much water. You've got the drought and the famine, not enough water. You've got the Red Sea parting, right? You've got fountains, you've got wells, all kinds of things happen at wells. You've got Moses laid in the river, the leader of the people of Israel. You've got the Jordan River, which plays a huge role in both the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures. And then when you come to Jesus, you've got his baptism, a seminal point in his life, where he realized he was the beloved. And then you also have his first miracle. What's his first miracle? Water to wine. Now, just because you're not going to clap out loud doesn't mean you can't talk out loud. Yeah, water to wine. I'm actually working on that one. But yes, turning water to wine. There's the calming of the sea, the breakfast on the shore, and think of our two key sacraments. What are our two key sacraments? Baptism and, I guess we need to go to confirmation. Yes. Baptism and communion, or the Eucharist. The Eucharist from the earth, baptism, water. But we're not the only one. Every tradition, water plays a central role. If you're a Muslim, before you pray, you do ablutions with water. If you're Jewish, you use the mikvah, the ritual bath, as a bath used for purification. If you're Buddhist, you may offer water at shrines, symbolizing your commitment to cultivate calmness and clarity and purity. If you are a Hindu, you probably, at one point in your life, will try and bathe in the Ganges River, which is viewed as holy. And then if you're part of the UU, the Unitarians, you participate in an annual water communion. And what they do in that is members bring to the service a small amount of water from a place that is special to them. And then at some point in the service, they pour that water into one huge bowl. And that combined water is a symbol of their shared faith coming from many different sources. And then it's blessed by the congregation. Later it's boiled and then used in other water rituals, such as blessing a child with holy water. Isn't that beautiful? And when Jesus says to the woman at the well, many of you know that story, she's in the heat at noon seeking water. He says to her, if you only knew the water that I could give you, the living water. I want you to think about that just for a minute, the living water. I think I'm just at this place in my life, I don't know whether it's my age or just things that I've experienced over and over that I'm paying deeper attention and intention to. But I'm at this very mystical place in my life, this place where I'm seeing everywhere the oneness of all things in kind of a profound way that I can't even quite take in yet. You've been hearing me talk about it some. And it's just something to sit with and really reflect on. You know, when Jesus said, I am the bread of life, he didn't mean I'm literally bread. I think he meant I'm in the bread because I am one with the bread. When he says, living water, I am in the water, I am at one with the water. This doesn't sound natural to our Western minds that want to categorize everything, does it? But as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the great Buddhist teacher, he explains it like this. See if you can grasp this. He talks about a flower. And he says the flower is made of non-flower elements. We can describe the flower as being full of everything. There is nothing that is not present in the flower. We see sunshine, we see the rain, we see clouds, we see the earth. We also see time and space in the flower. A flower, like everything else, is made entirely of non-flower elements. The whole cosmos has come together in order to help the flower manifest herself. And the flower is full of everything except one thing: a separate self, a separate identity. Did you follow that? Water is not a separate identity. Water encompasses all. And that's why the story I chose today, when Jesus talks to the great intellectual Nicodemus and says, if you want to be born again, and that word is pretty charged, isn't it? It's used very exclusionary. But what if we think about it? I want you to just imagine with me. You don't have to agree, just imagine. What if, when Jesus said, Nicodemus, you need to be born of water and of spirit? Maybe it wasn't symbolic, maybe it was literal. You need to be immersed in all that is. Don't just think of your spiritual life as something spirit up here, but as crucial to your very existence as water. As I was meditating on this, all of a sudden I could just picture that story of Jesus calming the sea. And it's a story, but then I begin to imagine, what is that like in a mystical way? And it could be that because of Jesus' oneness with the sea and with all that is, the calmness of his own being began to change the chemistry of the water. And just when you think I've really gone woo-woo California, I'm from the East Coast, remember? Just when you think that, There's a Japanese scientist called Masaru Emoto who wrote The Hidden Messages in Water. He did a scientific study that when people put their intention and focus into one body of water, it actually changes in a molecular way than those other waters which aren't. They did it by studying ice crystals. The crystals themselves changed. I probably said that to the scientists in the room in a very unscientific manner. But you get what I mean. Hidden messages of water. Maybe Jesus was saying, just imagine with me, Jesus was saying, immerse yourself in God, Nicodemus. Connect with oneness. Know that the life of God is not something in the heaven that you need to reach for. But the life of God is pulsating all around you. And when that happens, and that's what I'm talking about in this spiritual revolution, the categories of sacred and secular begin to dissolve. And the only categories that really matter are the sacred and the profane. The profane, that which we treat irreverently. I want you to think, as you've imagined that, hopefully. Think of all the ways water has healed you. Whether it's a warm bath after a long day, whether it's when you're too stressed out or have been crying, or you just simply run to the bathroom and splash water on your face to help change what's going on in you. Whether it's the joy of splashing with children, or swimming in a lake under a full moon at night. Whether it's a cool cloth on a feverish forehead, or the drink, the sip of water you offer to a sick loved one. Whether it's the mineral pools that offer healing, or the breathtaking beauty of a waterfall, or the constancy of the waves. If the earth is God's body, says Sally McFaig, then water is God's lifeblood. And even neurologically, the studies have been done, is that water provides and changes a person's neurological state into calmness and serenity in the same manner that meditation does. That overall people express more happiness when they're near water. In fact, one person calls it the blue mind, being of meditative state and deep well-being. Perhaps that's why the psalmist long ago, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God leads me beside the still water. I'll just close with this. As I was working on this, I came across an email written by my friend over 11 years ago, Paul Fairley, age 37 and a half, at that time, who was diagnosed with aggressive brain and lung cancer. And he wrote a beautiful piece called The River, and I'll just excerpt this from it. He said, I didn't know I'd need to learn to swim a second time in my life, and I didn't know the second time would be in a river. He listened to a song about how many rivers to cross, and as he played that song over and over and over again as he laid in his hospital bed, he came to the conclusion, if there is one river, there's just one river, and if there's one river, I can cross it. Every medical test is not a river of its own to be crossed. Every tumor is not a river of its own to be crossed. Every fear is not a river of its own to be crossed. There's just one river. And then he realized, I am already in the river. And as he meditated he began to feel a great opening throughout his body. And he says, as I breathe deeply, it comes to me, altogether fresh and clear. The river is the flow of life itself. God is the river, springing from love and flowing forever. From the very beginning, knit together in the fluid of my mother's womb, I have always been in the river of life, my life. I didn't know I'd need to learn to swim a second time in my life. But when I heard, you have cancer, we can't operate, you will undergo all these treatments, I simply learned to swim again. And the river said, I will carry you into eternity. Keep swimming. And he did, and it has. May the river hold you. Hold Bob. Hold Judy. So take yourself to the water, friends, and be immersed in God.